Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick update on my experience with the Panasonic ZS100. This is the latest addition to the Lumix line of compact point-and-shoot cameras from Panasonic, a Leica 25 to 250 millimeter variable aperture lens, f2.8 to 5.9, so you're not getting the prime-esque performance of the RX100 Mark IV, but you are getting a lot more range. Built-in flash in the center, stereo recording around it, as you can see the array right there. Mode dial, UHD video capture that can actually be used to the advantage of still as well. You can shoot up to 30 frames per second at 8 megapixels. That's using the video mode, really. It's utilizing or leveraging the video prowess of this camera so that you don't miss a moment, at least in the 8 megapixel still realm, which I think is a nice feature, as well as post-focus that I'll talk about a little bit later. And then you do have a EVF as well as a fixed LCD screen. Both are not as good as what you'd find in the RX100 Mark IV, but remember this camera is $700 US and does have arguably more flexibility than the RX100 Mark IV that's priced at $950. Build quality is solid, not as good as the RX100 that it competes with almost directly, but not really because of this lens. And quite frankly, I have to say the 5-axis stabilization, overall performance of the camera has been great. It has exceeded my expectations. Panasonic with the ZS100, I think, has a winner here. There's nothing else like it on the market. Quick startup time, quick focus, a great video machine, as well as a great still machine. And that's what makes this camera unique. Much like the RX100 was on the market alone for quite a while, so is now the Lumix ZS100. Nothing else like it except really bridge-style cameras. This 10x zoom lens has the compromise you'd expect with a 10x zoom lens, that variable aperture, which is still kept, I would say, in line with what you'd want to see. Battery performance, a little over 300 shots. When it comes to video, battery life is going to fall off, and batteries are expensive, but you can always go with a third-party battery. And the menu system is very, very clean. I can tell you that in advance. You want to get to a feature, you can get to it. You're not going to be hunting. The 4K video mode allows you to grab 8 megapixel stills at 30 frames per second using 4K video capture. So that means you're never going to miss a moment. Of course, that is something that you could be doing in post, but much like Sony, Panasonic wanted to deliver something that is unique to their camera that won't require post. You can see the zoom, how quick it goes both long to wide. And that's really the difference in identity beyond build quality and branding, and ultimately the performance of the lens here, which is a trade-off with the 10x lens, because like any zoom lens, you're not going to get prime or prime-esque performance, because that's part of the trade-off of having a lens that can do more when it comes to range. The EVF I found to be good, not amazing. It's not in the same class as what's built onto the RX100 Mark IV. Again, this is a less expensive camera that I would argue has more features that I care about, so that's more important to me. The fixed LCD screen is a touch screen, which I think many of you will care about. The post-focus feature, one of the most compelling, only found on more expensive Panasonic cameras until the launch of this one. And that allows you to take a picture, and if the camera autofocus system hit the wrong subject, you can literally touch the screen and change the point of focus. And that's pretty amazing. Again, something that generally would require, if even possible, to be done in post-processing. So both Panasonic and Sony taking different approaches to what post-processing capabilities they want to build into their cameras directly. You have Wi-Fi on board, so if wireless connectivity is what you're after, Panasonic is nothing, or rather, it's not anything new to them. This is something they've been doing for a while. The camera is made in China, for those of you that are wondering, which I was surprised. Build quality not as good as the RX100 line, only partially metal, predominantly plastic, or some sort of alloy, whereas the RX100 is just a beast. So if it's build quality you're after, the RX100 is where it's at. But if it's the overall flexibility, there's an EVF sensor here, as well as a dedicated button to designate that you're using Now it's on auto mode, as you can see, a dedicated button to determine what mode the EVF is in, whether you're using strictly the screen, the EVF, or automatic, where it will detect. Now I've turned it off completely. These are features that you will not find in the RX100 Mark IV, at least with a simple button press. And that's also indicative when it comes to the menu system. I have to bring it back up. It's just a cleaner system. Descriptions for every feature you're going to rifle through on this camera. Right now, I'm in priority mode. I just wanted to make sure what I was in. So, whether it's the photo style, standard, vivid, natural, monochrome, scenery, portrait, custom, jump back, your filter settings, no neutral density filter here. You do have it in the RX100 Mark IV, which for some of you will be a very important feature. Aspect ratio control, of course, nothing new there. Your picture quality, when in video mode, you can play with the 4K settings. Sensitivity, you can change that manually or leave it in automatic like any compact point and shoot, or just, I should say, point and shoot camera with a fixed lens. The camera has everything you'd expect it to. And again, the menu is very clean. You're not hunting to find the things that you're looking for. Their intelligent zoom is essentially, Panasonic's answer to Sony's clear image zoom. Works in a very similar fashion. If you jump to the video mode, which I will do right now, you'll see some of the different settings there. Jump into the menu, and 4K live cropping, an option, which is nice. Of course, the photo style, again, we don't have actual profiles like S-Log with Sony, but, who is this camera really targeted at? A casual user or a professional trying to make a film? I think that's something you have to ask yourself. But your quality right there, 4K at 100 megabits per second, that's 30p. You could drop it down to 24p, and then just do full HD to your heart's content, 28 and 20 megabits per second, depending on which you pick there. And of course, you can even drop it down more. Go to 720p or 480 if you're really living dangerously. So options, not an issue. It's really a matter of what you want to go with. Of course, to me, this is a 4K UHD little pocketable video camera because of that Leica 25 to 250 millimeter piece of glass. So that's one of the things I love about it. I really don't like adding any still imaging equipment anymore at this point that can't take on UHD video in a proper manner. The RX100 does overheat, does have a limited lens range, focal range, so that does make it less of a photographic tool in many ways than this camera, but it does excel at things that this camera does not. So that's important to point out, at least in its more limited 24 to 70 range. But there's really no other direct competitor to this camera other than the RX100 line, no matter which model you pick. Of course, the Mark IV is the most comparable model because its current has UHD video. The others do not. Has an EVF, so does Mark III, but no 4K video. Similar form factor and close pricing. $700 here for the Panasonic, $950 for the Sony. You're definitely paying a premium for an articulating screen, high-speed photography, and a faster piece of glass and better build quality. That really kind of sums up that comparison as succinctly as possible. But Panasonic has done a great job here. Even though they haven't put out a successor to the FZ1000, this is probably the best complement they could come up with, something in between the FZ1000 and the LX100, and that's exactly what the ZS100 represents. You're getting something that's the same size as nearly the same size and possibly the same weight because it's not built with the same material as the RX100 Mark IV, for less money, and that is more flexible. I do, as I've mentioned, prefer the Viewfinder on the RX100 Mark IV. It's higher quality, higher resolution, and more friendly to both left and right eye dominant people. This, on the other hand, is not. Lower res and not friendly if, like me, you are left eye dominant when using an EVF. It means you're going to press your face against this touchscreen, which is why there's the ability to turn it on and off, which makes a lot of sense. But this is such a feature-rich product at its price point. I really can't see any reason that anyone would pass up on picking this up, as opposed to something like, again, the bigger FZ1000, which does have a much larger lens. 400 millimeter reach, but is 4 times the size of this. It is a bridge style camera, in which case you could be bringing along with you, something with a much larger sensor than 1 inch. To me, 1 inch sensors really do belong in smaller bodies, this is kind of, the struggle that all digital imaging companies have, is that how do we get larger sensors into smaller bodies? Well, if you respect the constraints of those sensors, then you realize that a 1-inch sensor is definitely, in my opinion, much better suited to be in something this size than it is a bridge-style camera, even though it will work perfectly well there, as it does in the FZ1000 and the RX10 and the RX10 Mark II. I would rather personally carry around a 1-inch sensor in something that's compact enough to be a pocketable solution, rather than something that's going to have to go in a bag over my shoulder, albeit a small bag. So right now, the Lumix, unmatched. Even if I compare it to the RX100 Mark IV, it's only because they're priced similarly and have the same size, the form factor, and both have 1-inch 20 megapixel sensors. Beyond that, they are completely different beasts, much more flexible and versatile, the Panasonic, in my opinion. Are some corners cut when compared to Sony? Of course, and that's part of the identity, quite like the post-processing features that the Panasonic has built in as features, or the Sony has, again, as features. One camera sporting this one, the post-focus and the 30 frames per second 4K 8 megapixel still capture. The Sony, on the other hand, the articulating screen, no touch screen, but articulating, so you can get a selfie, vlog, whatever it may be, but also the slow motion photography element that does not exist here with the Panasonic, something you'd have to do in post. So right now, I can't really complain too much about what Panasonic has done here. They've raised the bar for the compact point-and-shoot market. All I can say is that Sony now has something to compete with for the first time in a really long time. And that's not to say that the LX100 or FZ1000 that I reviewed in the past did not give Sony a run for its money. Panasonic, I don't think, gets the attention or credit that they deserve in terms of pushing the envelope. They do a great job. This is one of many examples. I've covered every camera that I thought that they made that was compelling. So as long as they continue to put out stuff like this, they're going to have a place in the business, and a good place at that, because it has comparable, battery life to the Sony. It has comparable autofocus performance, but again, a much broader range of flexibility when it comes to its zoom lens, and no overheating when it comes to UHD video. And these are things that will determine which camera a consumer will pick, especially when they take into account the fact that this is a $700 product, brand new, just came out, compared to the $950 US product that Sony has to compete with it, at least right now, in the only fashion that it can. So a lot to like here with the ZS100. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, subscribe. Later.